think I am. Welcome to Talk with Ted, show about nothing. It is, what's today's date? Of what month? February 21st, 2019. Hard to keep track. The time flies, and especially when you move a couple of time zones, which I've done in the last week. And Mark Shurtleff was kind enough to cover for me on Tuesday. I think he did a good job. I was watching him from the airport, keeping an eye on him. And I thank him for that. And so you got to talk with Ted on Thursday. And it's 4:07 on a bit of a cloudy day here in Salt Lake City, Utah. We got some snow on the ground, and there is such an enormous pile of snow in the mountains. It's a little bit frightening. I read the other day about a home up in Park City where the roof collapsed into the kitchen because of the weight of the snow. And it's just piled so high on the roofs, you've got to get up there and scrape it off. And I think there's more coming. So if you've got a vacation plan to ski in Utah, it's a good year to do it. And of course, that's what interested me in Utah originally back in 1988 through the 90s and ever since. And I was supposed to have on the show today, and I was very excited about it, my childhood hero, mentor and coach, Billy Bano. And I always call him Billy because I'm Teddy and he's Billy. And as adults, it's Bill and Ted. But Bill is a great guy and inspired me as a young man and helps me to this day. And he's an assistant coach with the Indiana Pacers. And he committed to me, and we had a little bit of a miscommunication about some things, and I said no problem. I put him off, and so Billy will be coming. And I think that it's probably a good fortune for me because I can do this show remotely. I can take this on the road, and I'd like to take it on the road. I'd like to take it to Indianapolis and see a game, and I've got tickets anytime I want, thanks to him. And so for you folks back home that were so anxiously awaiting to hear from our hometown hero, Billy Bano, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer. And when I got thinking, it might be best after the Pacers get knocked out of the playoffs. I don't even know where they stand, but maybe when Billy's season is over, and there's maybe even when the finals are going on, that he'd have some great insight, and that might be the best time to have him on. So what do? I got to shift gears a little bit, and I've been focused a bit about, philosophy and technology, and I got thinking about artificial intelligence, and I've got a little pitch here, my philosophical point, if you will, for the first segment here. But I'm going to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence and Elon Musk. And I've got a great guest with me that responded on short notice. And a woman here in town, a lawyer that I spotted in the newspaper, a month or two ago. And the article and the photographs of her were so imposing that I brought them into this studio and showed them to Mark Shurtleff and joked, I think I may have had the paper with me, so I won't flatter you too much, Skye. And your mic's not on yet. But I said, look at her. How'd you like to go up against her? Because you really looked like an intimidating lawyer, super focused and committed. You could tell just by the pictures and the case that you were taking on. And that was a case that was in the news here about a football player. I think he was from Utah State University. And may have signed a professional contract and then came under allegations by not one but multiple victims complaining. And Skye Lazaro took that case on, tried it for 2 weeks, worked on it, I'm sure many sleepless nights. And I just met Skye about 10 minutes ago. She's sitting here. I'll have her on second segment. And we're just talking law and the business and, money and making money. And I just asked her, a case like that, what do you do? How much would a case like that, how much would you have to charge? All that work. And she didn't have the answer to that question because she didn't charge anything. And I'm going to talk to her about that. So I am more impressed with her already And so we're going to build a little excitement and anticipation up to that. And then ironically, I've got this topic of artificial intelligence, and I look across the desk here. She looks artificial. She's 5'11", striking, and she's incredibly intelligent. And so Skye will be our artificial intelligence for today. But AI kind of scares me a little bit. Self-driving cars scare me a little bit. I think it signifies sort of losing control. And the notion that, supercomputers and artificial intelligence will get us to a place that sort of a utopia where maybe we will not have to work and we'll live longer. And some say with a greater understanding of things and a deeper sense of feeling, and even a deeper depth of philosophy. And I kind of think they're going in the wrong direction, because it's a little bit of the integration of humanity, of sort of us humans playing a part, an aggressive, affirmative part in evolution by taking the technology that we've developed and essentially integrating it into ourselves. And I think on a simple level, we'd have nothing left to talk about, Skye. I'd say, well, what did you do last week? And boom, I'd know. Right? If we all had the supercomputer brain. And so it just kind of frightens me a little bit, that stuff. And it's not a brand new topic. I am a lover of the band Rush. One day maybe I'll get Neil Peart on here, but he was the lyricist, the drummer, and the great philosopher. And Rush had a song written in 1981, I think, "The Body Electric," and what it was a take from a Ray Bradbury story that was made into a Twilight Zone movie, and it was episode 100 back in the 50s. And so episode 100 dealt with a family, a father whose mother had passed, and he had 3 young girls to raise. And he worked at a factory, and the factory was called Facsimile Inc. And so as the girls grew, he needed someone to care after them. And so they went down to the factory and they built a robot, and the robot simulated the mother who had passed away. And 2 of the daughters immediately were drawn to her and embraced her for all she was. And the third was more skeptical. As it went on, that third that was skeptical was then in a situation about to be hit by a train. And the classic, what would a parent do? So the robotic mother or grandmother knocked her away and saved her life, and the robotic grandmother was crushed, but not destroyed. Because then the robotic grandmother reassembled herself and came back to life and became something more than what that real mother was able to do. And then, this is back in the 1950s, and it's considered one of the worst Twilight Zone episodes ever, because it ends with, now this third daughter embraces the robotic grandmother, and it ended with, I think, those girls going off to college and the grandmother going back to the factory to be built into something else. But there was a little sinister scene in it that when the grandmother went back into the house, her face melted, and it was a robot. But it never went into kind of what we're dealing with now. Is that a friendly robot, or is that a bad robot? But it's interesting to think that, way back at that time, they had that issue. And I don't claim for a second to understand any of this AI stuff, or where it could go, or how it can control whatever, or physical things, or metaphysics, or whatever they think it's going to do. But so there's a Rush song. One of my favorite Rush songs is based after that, and I didn't know that until just prepping for this show. So once again, inspired by Geddy Lee. Then we talked a bit about the Enlightenment, and we've spoken about the Enlightenment a few times, and of course, our country is based in large part on the Enlightenment and secularism and a conscious decision to remove religion from government. And we see it in our own government, the First Amendment, right? And it's curious that was considered enlightenment, okay? Because now I've come upon a new theory that's developed, a new philosophical theory in the last 20 years or so. And, you know, if the title of this one doesn't scare you, you're a scientist, okay? What is transhumanism? And this to me is kind of frightening because it's really the integration of us and the machine to make us better, to make us, to transform us from our current bodies and limitations, etc., into something maybe better. And now the optimists will say you won't lose yourself. You won't lose your identity in doing that. They're scientists, right. I think. But here's just a couple of quotes from this. Transhumanism is a loosely defined movement that has developed gradually over the past 2 decades. It promotes an interdisciplinary approach to understanding and evaluating the opportunities for enhancing the human condition and the human organism opened up by the advancement of technology. And so we're now using technology to improve our biology, okay? And what I'm reading from here is Transhumanist Values by an author by the name of Nick Bostrom. And I think that the name of his program is, his book is like Super Intelligent, it may be. The enhancement options being discussed include radical extensions of human health span, you're going to live longer, eradication of disease, elimination of unnecessary suffering, and you know, that to me, is that going to make us more human? Is there anything really unnecessary suffering? Is there such a thing? And augmentation of human intellectual, physical, and emotional capacities. And so they think that this will bring you to, you know, tap into new things. And even that emotional capacity, that scares me a bit because I'm a guy that struggled with depression over the years. And the thought that I might be able to get somewhere lower than I've been a few times in my life is kind of frightening, you know, that, oh, great, we're going to feel deeper, and then what's going to happen? Right. Here's another quote. Transhumanists view human nature as a work in progress, a half-baked beginning that we can learn to remold in desirable ways. So how does that resonate with the folks of Utah and really any you know, just religion? It's anti-religion. It's really embracing science that we can make ourselves better, but that we are currently a half-baked beginning. Well, you know, I got to tell you transhumanists that I feel a little bit better than that. Current humanity need not be the end point of evolution. Transhumanists hope that by responsible use of science, technology, and other rational means, we shall eventually manage to become post-human beings with vastly greater capacities than present human beings have.
Nice.
Think about that during the break. And we'll be back with Skye Lazaro. And we're going to
melt through the fake
we'll be back.
Snowflakes with a powerful
Welcome back. You are listening to Talk with Ted, a show about nothing. It's 4:24 here in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I've got a wonderful guest with me, a lawyer here in town, Skye Lazaro. And I'm going to get to you in one more second, Skye. I realized during that break, the transhumanism happens to me every time I pick up that new guitar, Alan.
Yeah?
Because that's all I need.
Right.
That's all I need to think... get me to that spirit realm.
Right.
But I'm just, I find that's kind of crazy stuff. Skye Lazaro. How are you?
I'm well, Ted. How are you?
Good. It's nice to meet you.
Pleasure is mine.
And introduce yourself to our listeners. I'm never sure if there's any of them, but we'll assume there's a few.
I am a lawyer here in Salt Lake City. I do a lot of criminal defense work, some corporate work. I've been here about 8 years. Came from Montana. Grew up on a ranch.
You don't look like a cowgirl.
You'd
don't.
be
You look like
surprised.
you're from New York City, Fifth Avenue.
I appreciate that. I still have boots at home, I swear.
Home in Montana or home here in Utah?
Home in Utah.
Oh, okay. I trust you then. And you had some function. I saw you on Facebook just a day or two ago. Some breakfast or something. Were you hosting something for some big dignitaries on the top floor to Grand America?
Well, actually, yes, but no. A few years ago...
Maybe with the help of a few of them?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, go ahead.
A few years ago, a friend of mine, another attorney here in Salt Lake by the name of Kate Conyers, approached me and asked me if I wanted to help her put on a homeless youth prom. The idea absolutely intrigued me, and I think there isn't anything better that you could possibly do with your time. So that sparked our involvement with the Homeless Youth Resource Center here in Salt Lake City. It's a function of the Volunteers of America. It's about 9th South and 4th West. It's a facility that's fully staffed. Teens can come and spend the night. They serve meals. And after our first homeless youth prom several years ago, we started this group where we serve dinner or breakfast, a couple times a month, and it's just continued to grow. And the number of volunteers that we have within our group has continued to grow, and so we've just felt really lucky that we've had, been fortunate enough in life and to be able to give back to some of those kids and give them some normalcy and support, and you get to know them all is a really great thing.
How many kids are down there? If I were to go down there right now, how many kids would I find in that facility?
It varies. I would say on average, when we do meals, we serve about 50.
And they house them overnight as well?
Kids can stay overnight. Not all of them do. I think they come from a variety of different circumstances. Maybe some have homes and they're not.
That was my next question. Are they homeless?
Some are truly homeless. I would say a majority of them are probably truly homeless, where they stay at the facility. They leave during the day. It's come and go as you want, but they're going to be warm. They're going to have a cot to sleep on, and they're going to get breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Wow. Okay, so first I want to talk about the prom.
Okay.
And then toward the end of the program, we're going to come back to this.
Okay.
And tell people how they can help out and that sort of thing. But I'm interested in the prom.
So
the prom, is that what it was? The
yeah,
homeless
it is.
prom?
It's an actual prom. The idea came from what used to be called the Cinderella Project here in Salt Lake City. It was run by Kate Conyers. She collected thousands of...
Hold on. We're going to get to her at the last segment.
Okay.
The prom.
The prom.
Get right to the prom.
Right
We'll
to the prom.
get to
Okay.
Kate it is, or Kay?
Kate.
Kate. We're going to give her plenty of props.
Okay. The prom's put on, we usually do it in October every year. We have a variety of services and local businesses that volunteer their time. We have people who come in and do nails, help with hair and makeup.
You're serious?
Yeah, absolutely serious. We have dresses. We collect suits for it. The boys get to keep their suits so that they have something to wear to job interview or whatever they might need it for. We have a DJ who comes and volunteers. We have all the food.
Where is it taking place?
We do it at the Homeless Youth Resource Center. So we do it right at the facility. We usually put it on within about a 4-hour time span. We don't have a lot of time. But we do a catered dinner and dancing and everyone's dressed up and it's decorated.
How many attendees historically?
I would say we get close to 50 to 100 people there.
Wow.
I was shocked. The first year we did it, I wasn't sure if any of these kids would show up. I didn't, kids that live in sort of that circumstance and those lifestyles. We didn't know if anyone would
Now,
want to
did
be
you
part
have
of a
to
prom.
ask someone out before to go, or was it just a show up? The boys and girls
No,
show up.
some came as couples. We had an engagement last year.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Wow.
Sadly, it didn't work out, but
Just the
You know.
engagement itself is
Yeah.
touching enough, right?
it was. It was great.
Yeah, that's amazing. We're going to talk more about the ball too, but you also told me briefly about some pro bono work that you do for the Women and Children's Center.
So the Women and Children's Center is also part of the VOA. It's a fairly new extension of it. It is a safe place where women can come with their children if they need somewhere to be, detox, stay, all of those things. They're currently, because of its newness, we're looking at collecting donations. They need women's clothing, hygiene products, all of those sorts of things. So I think we're going to kick off a clothing drive here probably in the next coming weeks.
And tell me again, where is that? No, where is the
The Women and Children's
Yes.
Center. I don't know the exact address of that offhand, so I apologize.
That's okay. We can look that up and get to that
Yes.
at the end of it too. You had that list of good deeds, so I wanted to address those things. And when we come back, we're probably getting low on time, Alan. How much? I'm usually pretty good. 2 seconds? Could be wrong. Skye, do you like being a lawyer?
I love being a lawyer.
How many trials have you done?
Oh, geez. Probably upwards of over 50.
How many
Closer to
felony
75.
How many felony defense trials have you taken to verdict?
Major felonies or any felony?
Felony. I consider every felony a major felony.
Fair point. Probably about 20.
20?
Yeah.
Are you nervous in court?
I wouldn't say nervous. I think there's a fair amount of, no matter how many you do or how long you do this, there's some adrenaline that comes with it.
Should
Similar
ask
to
you this. Are
probably
you
anything
focused
else.
in court?
I am focused.
You saw that funny picture I put up on Facebook with you and you're doing this with your fingers, right? The
Yes.
classic Mr. Burns,
Yes.
right? Putting your fingers together. And he was always conniving something terrible, how he could rip $1 billion off of somebody, right? You looked like you were conniving.
I was probably not ecstatic about whatever Spencer was talking to me about.
No, you don't have to name names. He couldn't be identified in the photograph that I put up there. But you got to go to battle with the DA's office
Correct.
and try to keep relationships with them at the same time.
It is. It's very important to do
Because
that.
if you burn the bridges, you're not helping your client.
Absolutely.
Then they're just digging in harder on you, aren't
Absolutely.
they? Yeah.
I think it's a good balance. I am personal friends with a lot of them and professional, and I've never had a problem personally with anyone.
And I shared with you, I don't do criminal felony cases, really. If I know that they're going to get pled down, I'll take it, but I won't do a criminal felony trial, in part because I'm not in there enough. I don't have the relationships. I don't know the tactfulness, and I haven't had the experience of losing. Right? Have you learned anything from losing, or have you won every case you've ever had?
I think you will always learn more from losing than you will ever learn from winning.
Yeah, isn't it something, we go to law school and we're all sitting in the same classroom, and you know what the historical record is for all of us? 50-50.
Is that right?
Yeah, if you put us all together, somebody won, somebody lost.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah,
Now my phone's ringing. I did that again.
that's okay. So what kind of emotional tie do you form with your client? And how do you set that aside?
That's always difficult. I think in order to maintain your own mental well-being and emotional well-being, you have to be able to compartmentalize things.
Okay.
That being said, when you work with someone and you get to know them, you get to know their family.
Right.
Yeah, then they get yanked off to jail if you lose.
Yeah, you're their last hope. And
Right.
and the collateral consequences to crimes, I think, is something that society doesn't always see. You know, someone may do something wrong and have to go spend some time in jail or in prison. But the reality of that is his family is likely going to end up homeless. You know,
Right.
there's children without a parent. There's a spouse alone. And you see all that, and you know, I think any of us would be remiss to say it doesn't affect us.
When I was 26-year-old lawyer, there was a criminal defense guy, Newman, back in, not like the Seinfeld Newman. This guy was good. But I remember he was probably my age, 52, and I was 26, and he was big-time criminal defense lawyer, and he was saying that you can't care. And I thought, that's crazy, you know. But now I know what he means. You know, like, you care, but you can't care. It's not your problem.
Right. It's not your burden to bear. It's your job to do the best job you can. I think you have to care on some level to be able to advocate effectively for your client and to be good at what you're doing. But at the end of the day, you're not the person who made the mistake. And you know,
Do you know what else? We
often,
lawyers think that we take such credit for the wins and the losses, right? When sometimes, no, it's just the facts.
right.
Right?
I think honestly, most of the time juries get it right, whether we
Yeah.
want to admit it or not.
Right. And thank goodness we do have juries.
Yes.
Yes, the old jury system. It's fun, isn't it?
It is.
You try civil cases too?
I have tried a few. Yes.
Okay.
They're
Well,
a little bit harder to get there.
yeah, they are. And it's kind of just sometimes the right case, you can just kind of see it. It's got to go there. But yeah, it's just but I always feel I've had cases, fighting over millions of dollars, but it's still just money.
Right.
And I tell my daughter the bills are all the same size.
That's right.
But I've never lost the case and had someone been put in cuffs and taken off to jail. And when I saw you in the paper with that big high-profile case, and I questioned you, I said, "Was there one witness?" That was after the verdict, and I had asked you, "Was there one complaining witness?" And you told me that no, there were 6, right?
Yes.
And then I thought, wow, that's a good result facing all of that, because that's just a really hard thing when it starts to compile like that, to then protect your guys' credibility and to try to tactfully question theirs, right?
Right.
Because I imagine you're pretty tactful.
I like to think I am. I wouldn't say I am the kind of attorney to go out and attack a witness. I think what we forget sometimes is people have their own perceptions of what happened and what a defendant perceived to have happened and what an alleged victim or a complaining witness perceived to have happened are generally very different things.
Right.
I had a civil case once where we had independent witnesses at an intersection, and they saw different things. One said this one had the green light. The other one said this one had the green light. And would you believe I lost it at the first one, and then they arbitrated like the underinsurance, and then the other side won it.
Wow.
So it actually went both ways.
It's
Right.
interesting, and you can talk to eyewitnesses from one month to the next, and they'll remember different things
Really?
or
And in your world, you don't get to take depositions.
do not. Or I shouldn't say we do not. Very rarely.
Special.
Yeah.
It's got to be kind of special.
You do get a preliminary hearing, which affords you the opportunity early on in the case to have some limited cross-examination.
Yep. And those are sometimes waived,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Do you find they're waived more frequently than not?
It depends on the case. A lot of times you'll receive an offer from the state that offer is contingent on you waiving your preliminary hearing, and sometimes the risks are so great with what they're charged with that you really need to preserve something while you continue to investigate the case.
Judgment call case by case.
Yes, definitely.
We're going to have a little bit of fun. Besides talking law, we might be able to take a few calls. I'm going to talk basketball at some point.
Sounds great.
You know, you're in place of NBA assistant coach that works for Larry Bird. That I've been plugging for a week, and now I look like I'm going to let everybody down unless you pull through.
I could probably talk a little basketball.
You can talk a little basketball. What's the last game you watched?
I went to the Utah-Oregon State game. I watched a little bit of Duke last night.
It's going to be a good show.
Star.
I knew it. We'll be back with Skye Lazaro, and we're going to talk about growing up in Montana and how you got down here to Utah. Welcome back to 1640 K Talk, Salt Lake City, Utah. It's 4:45 on a Thursday afternoon, and you're listening to Talk with Ted, a show about nothing, episode 16. Last week I did a bit on, well, I was supposed to do Common Ground last Thursday with Mark Shurtleff, and learned just 20 minutes ahead of time that he wasn't going to show up, so I made that number 15. And the title of that program was God is Dead, but Mark Shurtleff sure isn't. And that phrase, God is Dead, comes from the book Thus Spoke, I can never pronounce it, Zara something or other. One of you people at the U know what I'm talking about. But that phrase, God is Dead, and you think, ooh, that's a terrible thing. But what it was meant to sort of symbolize is that God and religion was being removed from government. It was, the rise of secularism. And we see it in our own Constitution and, of course, in the French Revolution. And now, a couple hundred years later, I just thought during that break, I find it a little bit curious that we call that period of time the Enlightenment, because maybe we weren't so enlightened after all. And maybe, having some of that influence in our government and lives is important. And now what I opened up the show with, kind of going the opposite way, is now this new philosophy of, I have it here, my notes, what do we call it? The transhumanism. That we're now going to use our own abilities and technology to sort of transmute ourselves into something greater and to play an active role in evolution, biological evolution. And I find that just a little bit frightening, and it sort of takes that enlightenment, if that's what you still want to call it, a step further, that we'll now sort of elevate ourselves to eternal understanding. And I'm not even sure what it is, the quest that they're after. It's knowledge is what people are after. Knowledge. And I like to come on here and say, I don't really know the answer to anything. I can make a lot of assumptions, but I question, even reality itself. And a life of a lawyer, I've kind of been trained that way, because once I think I'm right, analyzing a legal issue, you know what I do? I stop thinking. And I've learned the hard way a number of times that stopping thinking has hurt me. And so being a lawyer has kind of forced me to be sort of philosophical in that sense. But I did a bit about Plato and true democracy and virtues and what it means to be happy. And so a little back to Plato and Socrates and artificial intelligence. So Socrates never really wrote anything, but he went around Athens and made everybody feel like a fool by asking them all kinds of questions that they didn't know the answers to. And he came on trial, and it was a jury of 500 peers. It was a bit of a true democracy. And he defended himself, and part of that defense was proclaiming himself. You got to be the wisest man in all of Greece. And he backed that up by saying that he didn't know anything. And Plato then later reflected on that and thought that Socrates was in fact the most knowledgeable because he had perspective, in that that he went around, asked everybody else, he questioned his beliefs, and kind of he ultimately questioned everything, and that made him sort of I don't know what to call it, maybe not the most knowledgeable in the book sense, right? But then that kind of translates to artificial intelligence. And Elon Musk has this program that he's initiated, OpenAI, and I believe that this is to get as much input into this computer program as possible so that we're not biased by just the scientists, et cetera, that can do it. But you go back to those old ancient writings and the philosophicals and the meaning of life and the finding of eternity, and to me it just really runs quite contrary to this our mechanical effect to try to promulgate that for our own good. I'd like to continue driving my own car, and I like my job. So I don't really want technology to take my life away. What am I going to do? And if that, I'm going to be a hell of a golfer if I've got all of that in me, right? And so I just this stuff is interesting and curious. But now we're going to shift gears to a cowboy from Chicago, cowgirl from Chicago. Although I don't think she remembers Chicago very well. Skye Lazaro. And Skye, for people that are just tuning back in, Skye's Studess attorney here in Salt Lake City. I hope I don't get in trouble by my daughter by saying that. But I saw you in the paper a few months ago, Skye. You looked ferocious defending a football player that had been accused of some crimes, and it was in the news. It was a 2-week trial. And tell us about that. Who am I talking about besides you?
Tori Green.
Tori Green?
Yes.
And now that came on pretty quickly, didn't it? Of the allegations, I mean?
No, so
well, let me put it to you this way. I'm sorry. He'd been gone from here.
He was gone from here.
Had an
correct.
NFL contract.
Correct.
And so when I say came on suddenly, to me it kind of came out of the blue maybe after he'd been gone. But you tell me the timeline.
There was one case that was initially back in 2013-14 investigated, and then the district attorney's office declined to prosecute that case. Nothing else came about until he had graduated from Utah State University.
Well, so were there charges then?
There were not charges. There was an investigation. It was screened by the district attorney's office, and they declined to file the case.
Which county?
Cache County,
Okay.
Logan.
Okay.
And then after he signed a free agency contract with the Atlanta Falcons, he was days from the end of camp. The Salt Lake Tribune launched a story. The first story.
You say he was dazed?
It was days before the end of camp.
Okay.
So
I'm thinking concussion.
no, they signed 100 and some or
big money.
yeah guys to come to camp, and then they cut back to their 75-man roster.
Okay.
So it was arguable he probably would have made it. He'd made it almost to the end. Upon the allegations coming out, however, just through the media, nothing had been filed at this point as far as formal charges. He was cut from the team immediately. No questions asked.
Oh, even when there was just rumors of it?
Yes.
No charges, just the media?
Correct.
And that affected him?
Yeah, he was basically taken off the practice field and escorted off the premises.
Okay. Did you represent him then? Probably not,
I
right?
did not.
Okay.
I didn't get involved in the case until the charges had been filed. October, November of 2016.
How'd you get involved in that case?
I was contacted by, I believe, his publicist or a family member. I can't exactly remember which one. At the time, there were only four, I shouldn't say only, but there were 4 complaining witnesses. They asked me to take a look at it, to go talk to them, meet with them, see if I'd be interested in taking it.
And we say meet with them, the family, not the victims.
Not the victims. No, meet
Okay.
with
Yep.
Tory himself,
Okay.
and meet with the family. The understanding from the beginning is that I'd be taking this case on a pro bono basis.
Okay. Any connection with the family for you?
I did not know them. No.
Okay. Why did you do that? Take it on a pro bono basis?
Just felt like the right thing to do. Sometimes I think as attorneys, we tend to shy away from cases that on their face look awful and sound awful and are emotionally charged. It's hard to get people involved. It was hard to get help on it, frankly.
6 witnesses?
There ended up being
Or
actually
six victims?
There ended up being 7. There is still one case that was not consolidated with the other 6 that will have to either be tried or resolved in some fashion.
Okay. And what ultimately, you don't have to give me every detail, but the heaviest charges, what were the most serious charges?
That he was convicted of?
No,
or
that he was faced with, charged with.
He was charged with aggravated kidnapping, which is probably sentencing-wise the worst.
And how many counts of that?
1 count of that. Numerous counts.
Was he convicted of that
He
count?
was not. He was acquitted of the aggravated kidnapping.
What were the other next level of most serious charges?
Rape.
Rape.
So there were 5 counts of rape.
Wow.
And then numerous counts of forcible sexual abuse, unlawful detention.
And are there
object rape.
differences in penalties in these things that you're describing?
There are.
Okay.
There are. Some of these are life caps, all the way down to one of the charges. One of the charges he was ultimately convicted of was a lesser included offense that was not initially charged.
Okay. I'm gonna get to that. A worst case scenario, when you walk in there and if you just lost that entire case, what would it mean for him?
Utah has what's called indeterminate sentencing. So a judge, and he has not been sentenced yet, but a judge would probably in this case send him to prison on every single count and arguably probably issue them consecutive. So he'd be looking at 11 consecutive life sentences.
11 life sentences.
Basically. And then it's
Okay.
up to the parole board what they want to do with that.
Okay. 2-week trial?
Yeah, just about. It was just about 2 weeks by the time the jury came back.
How many witnesses?
Oh man. So there were 6 complaining witnesses. There were 3 expert witnesses, numerous law enforcement. It was a several-page witness list. I don't remember exactly how many.
Okay. We didn't talk about the cowgirl from Montana. I do it every time, but we will get to that. But I've had a few more questions about this case, and then we're going to get to know Skye Lazaro a little bit more and how she ended up in Salt Lake City,
As a
Utah.
small business owner.
Welcome back to a Thursday edition of Talk with Ted, a show about nothing. No insult to you, Skye. I try to like to think it's just the opposite. But I've got a great guest here, Skye Lazaro, lawyer here in town. She's telling us about a case that she's recently handled for a prominent high-profile case with a Utah State University football player. And I'm going to get back to that in 1 minute. I was supposed to have on assistant coach Bill Bano of the Indiana Pacers, and I was crossing my fingers that Larry Bird would give me a call. But it's all going to work out because I've been invited to Indianapolis, and I can go anytime I want. And I may just record the show there. Billy's a busy guy, or do it after the season. It was just too much for him, and the last thing I want to do is give Coach a hard time. But that's going to be a great one. And I started the show talking about philosophy, the Enlightenment, and I'm intrigued with Tesla. And I said in the first or second segment about the Enlightenment that maybe we should rethink that name for that philosophical period, because maybe we weren't so enlightened after all, and because a large thing that came out of that was the idea of secularism and the removal of religion from government, and of course the separation, the church and the governing king and queen in England, and there was plenty of good reasons to seem like that was a good idea at that time to remove church influence, but of course there was some risk associated with that. And I've said here, it's also kind of idealistic. You can't ask people to leave their beliefs at the steps of the courthouse. And here in Utah, with the predominantly LDS legislature, I think it's 78 or 80%. Many people that whenever there's a conservative law passed, they say, "Oh, that's the church, that's the church, that's the church." And I've said before, we should try to look past the religion towards the virtues. What tempts us? How do we need to regulate ourselves? And I think we're kind of just down this path to unlimited freedom and replacement democracy. If I don't like who's governing me, I'm just going to replace them. And we're in a dangerous spot. Tesla and Elon Musk concerns me a little bit, just because I think people have kind of a hope in him that you don't feel so bad if you're throwing out the plastic bottle, or because there's going to be some solution. And of course, humanity's thought that since Oppenheimer first split the atom, that what are we going to do with this? And we haven't figured out a place to store a single atom of that radioactive material for a permanent basis. And I'm going to have Dr. McDonald from the U on March 5th, and we're going to talk about that. So from the Enlightenment and sort of removing religion from politics and from government, and to some extent society, that and from humanity, that will now we're enlightened enough to figure it out ourselves. And now we've got this theory of transhumanist values where these scientists and groups think that we can use this technology to actually contribute to our evolutionary growth to achieve what I see it as is sort of human-based knowledge, math and science. And the transhumanists view human nature as a work in progress, that we're half-baked and we're going to mold ourselves into something better. Now, Elon Musk has an organization that he started, a corporation, to try to, I think, broaden the influence of who would contribute to the programming of these machines, because our biases will be programmed into those machines. And some of these machines now, they're shown thousands and thousands of photographs and asked to identify, the most attractive person, and they're stereotypical. It's like all white people. And it's the computer doing it. And so now Elon Musk, I think he's now quit that organization, but he's gone on, he and Bill Gates as well, saying, about the dangers of artificial intelligence. And yet Elon Musk himself is a transhumanist, because one of the things that the transhumanists will do is to occupy multiple planets. And so even though he, is heading up these things to try to tame the artificial intelligence as like a philosophical matter, he believes in the technology improving us. And again, I don't want a self-driving car. To me, that signifies losing control.
Right. And
I don't want a life where I don't have to do anything. Or ask a question because I already know the answer. And to me, that just kind of sounds like hell. And again, just sort of the thought for the day, and like, what exactly is knowledge? What knowledge are we after with that? And again, the Enlightenment strikes me as odd. Let's get back to real life here in Utah, and a tough defense lawyer. So a little bit of recap. Skye Lazaro defended a case. I hate to ask you how much money you would have charged for that. It's got to be six figures and some. You're shaking your head.
No question.
No question. And so you had a case with the football player. Give us the quick summary as like a little bit of a recap.
Torrey Green was played at Utah State University, obtained his degree there, signed a free agency contract with the Atlanta Falcons, after which time, and after he had left Utah to move to Atlanta, a story broke through the media about some girls who were alleging that Torrey had sexually assaulted
How many
them.
in that first media story?
I think there were initially two, and then there were two more in a story that supplemented it that actually named him.
Okay.
And so there were four, and at that point, the Falcons cut him just on the media story alone.
Just on the allegations.
So he went.
What happened to
back
the presumption of innocence?
I like to believe that exists, but I think you
Apparently
know
not with,
better.
not with the Falcons.
Definitely not with the Falcons. I'm not even sure.
They said they let Michael Vick do whatever he was doing forever, wasn't he, with the Falcons? Michael Vick,
I think he was for a
when
time.
he was beating up the dogs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but back to your case.
So he was ultimately charged by 7 different complaining witnesses.
Were they all in the original indictment?
They were originally all separate cases. So there were 4 cases that were initially charged, and then an additional 3. So in Utah, we have a sort of a same and similar acts type statute called the Doctrine of Chances. They
got consolidated.
So we litigated that. I lost on.
You wanted to try them separate.
6 of the 7, right? And what would have happened? I still could have tried them separate, but the practical matter is all those complaining witnesses were going to testify in each case anyway. So I was going to do the same trial 6 different times.
Understood.
So we consolidated it. So
Okay. Did you have help?
I had some investigator help. There were a couple.
Did you have lawyer help? Do you have another lawyer sitting next to you?
No, I did not. I tried the case alone. There were a couple that did some contract work for me along the way, but
How many lawyers on the other side?
2.
How many total witnesses?
6 complaining witnesses, and we had several pages of witnesses. I don't remember. I know there were 3 experts.
So you
law
cross-examined
enforcement.
the 6 victims.
I did.
And have you had a case like this before where you've done that?
I've done a number of rape trials before. This is the first time I've had 6 complaining witnesses in one trial.
Oh, your jury. What was the jury composed of, men and women?
The jury was, I want to say it was 5 men and 3 women. We had a couple alternates that were excused at the close of closing statements before they went to deliberation.
Okay. How do you approach a witness like that? Now, of course, the district attorney has that person first.
Correct.
And they testify for what, an hour at least?
Yeah, some of those girls were on the stand a long time.
Much longer, maybe much longer, but a minimum an hour,
Right.
right? And they're working up all of their credibility, right? And you're getting all of some particularities and some sympathy. Are there any tears anywhere when any of these women were testifying?
They all cried.
When you say they all,
I think all of
The
them
jurors?
cried. Well, there were some juror tears along the way too. I think all the complaining witnesses, well, not all of them. I think a majority of them, at least at one point, got a little teary on direct.
okay.
They didn't necessarily cry when I questioned them.
So how do you approach, and I know you probably have to look at each one differently, right?
Yeah. I mean,
But what's your style when you go to approach a female that's accused someone of something so serious and then gives a story that's got tears in the courtroom?
I think you really have to do a quick read on someone's personality. An effective cross-examination, at least in my mind, and I know this probably differs, is get what you can out of it and sit down. You know, you don't need to belabor the point. You don't need to redo the direct examination. But if there are
Or bludgeon
problems,
them.
yeah,
Right.
and you don't necessarily, I don't know that beating up on them
Never works here in Utah.
hurts. Yeah, it doesn't help. And so, there were problems with some of the stories that these girls were telling.
Give us an example if you're able to.
Yeah, one of the girls, they're all late disclosures. So some of these girls waited years to ever come forward and say anything. And, in that time period had opportunities to do so. One girl.
So as a defense lawyer, you're saying that that's not quite credible.
I think it's problematic. I think when you
Good way to put it.
I think when there's expert opinions on both sides of this, right? That people suppress things and don't want to deal with it until they can.
Did your experts deal with those issues?
Yeah, we had experts
Okay.
who address those issues. So there's multiple reasons people may or may not come forward. And so I didn't necessarily go into that. What I dealt with was when they disclosed and why. So, for example, one girl,
Fundamentals, right?
yeah, didn't say anything until she was in a whole bunch of trouble. She was in trouble with her mom. She was breaking curfew, doing all this foolish party and stuff. And so she got grounded, basically. And then all of a sudden she was like, oh no, this bad thing happened to me, so it's okay.
And then leave it at that?
Yeah, well,
But
it depends. Yeah,
right.
you just cross-examine takes on a life of its own, and so you just have to be
React.
Yeah, you just have to be quick and react, and let it kind of go where you almost have to let it go where it's.
Do you
gonna
believe?
go.
Do you believe in that rule? Never ask a question that you don't know the answer to.
I'm not sure in criminal defense you ever know what the answer is going to
That's
be.
a good answer because I don't believe in that rule. There might be a good reason not to ask it now and
Correct.
again, but more often than not, I'm going to get something that
Yep.
it's going to take me somewhere else, and I might get something from it.
Correct. Right.
The time flies. We'll be right back with Skye Lazaro. Welcome back to Talk with Ted. My name is Ted McBride. I'm an attorney here in Salt Lake City, Utah. This is episode number 16. I almost forgot what I called it. Billy got called to work. Bill Bano was supposed to be here. Larry Bird must have told him he couldn't come. So now I got two things to be pissed off at Larry about. Three, really. Losing at the Huntsman Center. Missing the three-pointer in 1987 that he says should have gone in. And now this. But luckily, he's got Skye Lazaro as a backup. And Skye, you were explaining to us the criminal case up there at Utah State, and there's never enough time to get to all of it. Well, let me ask you this: on those six witnesses, the complaining witnesses that you cross-examined, what were the rough time frames? What was the shortest one, and what was the longest one?
One girl actually came forward right after, and that's the case that was investigated by the Logan Police Department. It was screened by the Cache County District Attorney's Office, and they declined to file charges on that initially, and saying that there was not enough evidence or something.
So you spent a lot of time on her.
I did spend a lot of time on that.
Naturally.
Yes.
Okay.
In
Were there any
fact-
of them that you didn't ask any questions of?
No, I questioned all of them. In fact, interestingly, the investigating detective in that case, the state didn't call him. I had to call him in my case.
Oh, really?
So it makes it fun.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love doing that. You know what I love doing at a trial, too, is going in, and everybody thinks it's going to be, he's going to call his witness first and do it in the textbook order, and I call the defendant first. I love doing that. Like, I wasn't ready to testify today. It's like, that's the whole
It's
point.
good. Yeah.
Right? So it's, you got to be kind of unorthodox sometimes. So that case, I know 6 witnesses, a few real heavy charges, the kidnapping and rape, then some lesser included. Give us sort of the lowdown. Ultimately, you don't have to break it down count by count. But what was the ultimate jury verdict?
Ultimately, he was convicted of rape with 5 of the women. There were some lesser charges associated with those as well. And then the sixth, he was only convicted of a Class A misdemeanor, which was a sexual battery, which is like a boob grab, for lack of a better word.
I don't know. Uh-oh. Be careful. Were you satisfied with that? Bittersweet? I can see it on your face.
Yeah, I mean, it was a hard case.
Yeah.
I think that's a hard case for everyone.
Yeah. I think I texted you that night. I have a funny way of doing that. When I see a trial lawyer in the paper with something kind of tough, I like to give him a little pat on the back. But because that looked tough to me, what you were doing.
Yeah, those cases are not easy. They're emotional on a lot
Now,
of
I'm going to
levels.
tell you, you're being modest on the radio because I asked you in that text, I said, that's a win, and I hope you understand that or something. You were like, oh, yeah, I do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because you had a lot more to lose.
Correct. It could have been far worse.
And isn't it something, a heavy responsibility that comes with it because you can't change what people say. You can try to influence it a bit, right?
Right. The facts are the facts. We, as lawyers, have an ethical obligation to represent our clients within.
But did you have your glasses
bounds of
on
the
when you
facts.
saw that that event?
Right.
And was it dark out?
Right. And
Yeah.
is that really what you remember? And
Yeah. The memory is really the key.
correct.
And with all the video cameras and stuff, we're going to get put out of business.
Yeah.
The next generation of lawyers.
Interesting, this case, though, and I think I said it in my closing argument, is there were only 2 people in that room, so we don't have any
There was no
video. We don't have
nothing.
anything like that.
Yeah.
We only have his story and her story.
Yeah. And sometimes it's those cases, then they go to trial,
Right.
right?
Right.
And the sentencing is coming up.
End of March.
So let's just leave that case right now. How's
Sounds
that?
good.
Before you got down to Utah, you worked in Montana
That is correct.
because you went to law school in Montana.
I did.
And you mentioned to me some Title IX work. So what is Title IX work?
Title IX is an arm within the university system. All state schools have a Title IX office. They are responsible for dealing with or investigating any discrimination type claims that arise within the school. I was associated with them in the context of athletes and coaches.
Okay, so it can happen to instructors or anybody else at the school?
Yep.
Administrators?
Yep.
How did you get niched in with the athletes?
I was fortunate enough when I graduated law school, I went to work with a guy who was leaving a firm who had he was doing criminal defense, a lot of DUIs, some personal injury, and we ended up defending basically any student athletes that got in trouble in Missoula came in our office.
Give us just an example of what kind of issues you were dealing with.
I did everything from, I had some DUIs, I had some rapes, some assault and batteries. I had a cross-country track guy who went streaking across the field at a football game.
Is that illegal?
It is.
Shouldn't be.
Turns out.
I think we should get one
Maybe
from
don't
BYU,
do
one
that.
from Utah, and have them hug at midfield.
Yeah.
Right? I have a real beef with the Holy War, the animosity here between the
I know,
two
it's
schools.
crazy.
Bugs the crap out of me.
Yeah. I mean, I think a good, healthy, I love a good, healthy college rivalry.
And they had to take a break. They had to take it off the calendar for a
Yeah.
year or two, which is terrible.
Stupid.
Right?
And then the legislature got involved. It was
Did they?
It was
I didn't know
crazy.
that. What happened?
when they stopped playing, they basically came out and audited the University of Utah athletics, and sort of part of that, I think,
They figured-
resolution maybe off.
Oh, really? Okay.
Ended
Did
up,
they
they
figure
ended
out
up
that
having
Rick
to
Majerus-
play again.
What's that?
They ended up having to play games they weren't intending to play.
Oh,
So.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to research that more. I thought maybe they got to the bottom of Rick Majerus buying Keith Van Horn a hamburger.
They did not. In fact, there's also, from what I remember,
Do you remember that?
Yeah,
You got in trouble with
there's
that?
a missing key somewhere that is rumored to have been buried with Rick Majerus as well. To the
The
athletic
key to what?
Center. Some room.
Is the
in
room out of the
Huntsman
hotel he
Center.
lived in?
Yeah.
It's the mini bar.
It was it belonged to the University of Utah. So there's an unaccounted for.
Interesting. What an amazing guy he was.
Yes.
And he really
No question.
defined Utah here. Now, I'm trying to get a coach whose name I will never attempt to pronounce.
Chris Goviak.
Do you know that guy?
I do.
Will you get him to
he's
return my text?
I'll work
Maybe
on him.
when the season's
He's
over.
a Montana guy.
Is he a Montana guy? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
He coached at. He played at the University of Montana. He's from Havre, Montana, actually, or up on the High Line.
Okay.
Played at the University of Montana. He has an amazing story.
I'd
Actually,
like to help him tell it.
Yeah, he's amazing. And then had an illustrious career in the NBA, and they've been phenomenal here in Utah.
You know what else I'm going to have on the program? The first deaf NBA player here from Utah. Get my glasses. I'll pull it up here. So I'm sure people out there know. And he's writing a book this year. He's a TEDx, TED Talk speaker. I'm gonna pull it up here. But I've got some interesting people coming on with real, just inspirational stuff. Do you know Larry Bird?
Not personally, no.
Okay, but you know Coach K up here, though. You think
I
you
do.
can help me getting in there? What about Quinn Schneider?
I do not know Quinn.
We got to get to know Quinn.
Yeah.
Maybe if I take him out to lunch with you, he'll come. What a great guy he is. But I'm a big sports junkie. I just love sports. You've got a son,
I do.
hockey player,
Hockey and lacrosse.
and you told me that he's on a team in Boston, and that doesn't make any sense to me
So the team
because we live in Utah.
The team is here in Utah, but they play Tier 1 hockey in a league back east.
Okay, same thing.
Yeah.
So the team's here, but the league is there. How often do you go there?
He's back there. They played, they made 5 trips back there. Then they played, I think, Colorado, Chicago, California.
Now, I know from speaking with you that I can go here, but you had him in college.
I did. I was 20 when I had him.
20,
Yes.
unmarried.
Unmarried.
And what year were you in college?
About a sophomore.
Sophomore.
Yeah.
And what did you study in college?
Political science, business,
me
and
too.
communications.
Okay. And after college, directly to law school?
No, I took a year off. I worked on my MBA. I wasn't real sure what I was gonna do.
So you've got an MBA as well?
I didn't finish it.
Okay.
I would then got
Buy
into
low,
law
sell high.
school. Yeah, yeah. Then got into law school and decided I probably should just get through it. So I just hustled through and graduated early and
Law school?
went to work. Yeah,
6 weeks?
I wish. Only in California.
Where'd you go to law school?
University of Montana.
Of Montana.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, where'd you go to college?
Same place.
Same
Missoula.
place.
Yeah.
How big a school is that?
It's in the Big Sky. I'm not exactly sure how many students are there. It's it's not a huge school.
I get
mean,
confused.
It's
Is
a
that
decent-sized
all the
state
way
school.
west, Missoula,
Missoula-
of the main towns there?
Yeah, Missoula's basically almost straight north of us. So Bozeman is the other one where the Montana State is at, and that's
where's that? Which
Bozeman
direction?
is a little bit further east, kind of towards the middle of the state.
Okay.
It's where Big Sky
Okay.
ski resort's at.
I haven't been up there in 20 years.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. How about the snow here? Do you ski?
I do ski.
The snow is unbelievable, isn't
This
it?
year is amazing. I
My.
haven't had time to ski yet this
No,
year.
I haven't had much either. I've got to get out. You say you're jetting around all the time. Besides the hockey, what else are you jet setting around with?
I do some corporate work, or I work for a company called Injury Care Solutions. That's also a medical and litigation funding type company for personal injury. We do business in a number of other states, so travel some for that. I
let me-
travel
let me
mostly
break
for
that down.
myself.
Oh, I don't doubt that. I've seen your Facebook. If anyone wants to know more about that, just look at our Facebook. We don't have time for that. The Injury Care Solutions, as I understand it, they will help people get their medical bills paid or fronted.
Yeah, so what the company does basically is in a personal injury case, sometimes it's hard to get the treatment.
Because people don't have insurance and no money.
Exactly.
And they're hurt.
Yep, and the third party insurance company is not going to pay piecemeal.
Right.
So they want to just
And they're
settle the case
laughing,
as a
going,
whole.
ha ha.
Exactly.
You can't get
And-
treatment.
if you can't get the treatment, it devalues the case because then you don't have
Yeah.
medical bills
and
to show
it's,
that you
and
have.
it's always been a problem.
It is. So this company comes out of Florida or Georgia, based here in Utah. They will go in, purchase the account receivable
For the medical?
for the medical treatment, and then hold the lien until the case settles.
Okay. And so then people are basically then free to go to the doctor, and they're kind of paying for it.
Right.
And I'm assuming they get a bit of a premium for that. Must be halfway decent. It's a loan, right?
It's not a loan. It actually is. It's more akin to medical factoring. So
How do they make their money? Let me put it to you that way.
Essentially, they buy it at a reduced rate.
Perfect. Yep.
So
Okay. And then they go to the hospital and negotiate and
Right.
maybe save some.
right, and
Okay.
a lot of times it ends up saving the patient money when they have to pay it
Because you know how it is. If you go to the hospital and you've got insurance, they charge you one rate.
Right.
And if you don't have insurance, you get charged a higher rate.
Right.
Because that insurance company is a very good customer, so they get the preferred rate.
That's correct.
And so then your outfit can then sort of work that margin, that injustice that the person that doesn't have insurance.
That's right.
That's a great thing.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
It helps a lot of people.
That's a great thing because there's a lot of people that struggle. And a lot of people don't know about PIP insurance, right? Personal injury
Right.
protection in your own auto policy.
Right.
And how cheap it is.
Yeah, and it's.
And
I
how
mean,
you
you get
get-
up to $3,000. It's different in every state, but in Utah,
Yeah. More medical insurance for you.
correct.
Yeah. Do you know in New York it's 50,000?
Yeah, all the states are different. I remember it was Minnesota or Michigan I was looking at, and it was 25,000. Our company doesn't do business in states with a high PIP because it's not a necessity.
Because the coverage is there.
Right.
Yeah.
The people are going to be able to get
And
the
so the
treatment.
PIP for the people listening, it's the no fault. When you hear about no fault insurance, I always give the example: you could drive your own car into your own tree, crack your head open, and your no fault insurance, your car insurance, will pay the first part of those bills. And then if you have health insurance, they'll look to that. Same as if you slam your finger in a car door and break your finger, if it's the use and operation of a motor vehicle.
Right.
And then it gets complicated if you're working, because
Right.
then you have workers' comp, right?
Yes.
And then the private insurance.
Yes.
And then it gets really complicated if when you're working, you take a detour and get a bottle of vodka and crash your car.
Those cases go
then
to
you may have
trial.
no insurance. Those cases go to trial, exactly. Those cases go to trial. It's a great answer. Where were we? We're closing and coming back to one last segment. And so what you wouldn't be on here, well, maybe you would. You looked really impressive and just tenacious in the newspaper, and I shared that with you about that case and what a tough thing that is to do. And I wish you luck with all that going forward. We're not done yet. But what really caught my attention about you, because I could have Greg Skordas on instead of you, if that's all I wanted.
Great.
Tough as nails, Greg Skordas. But your work with these homeless kids and the Women and Children's Center, and I know you do pro bono work, and I know that you and I agree that we lawyers have an obligation to kind of, share some of that info and those resources, and so I want to talk about your good deeds when we come back. And the commercial and the music should come on right about now. I'm off today, Alan.
Huh?
Tell us something interesting about yourself before the music comes on. What kind of music do you like, Skye Lazaro?
Oh, I'm a country girl.
Country girl.
Yeah.
Okay. Such as, give me, I don't know any country
Chris
artists.
Ledoux.
Never
I'll have to
heard
look
of
him
him.
up. I'll play it for you.
Welcome back to the final segment of Talk with Ted, a show about nothing, episode 16 with Skye Lazaro. And Skye's going to finish up the show telling us about her good deeds, and we're going to talk resources and pro bono work and some things. But before I get to that, just transitioning into this, in case you're just tuning in, this show I've been questioning a little bit whether the Enlightenment is the proper name to describe that philosophical period in the 1700s or so, of which our forefathers, are philosophers of, because what came out of that in part is secularism and the removal of religion from state. And now I've been talking about Elon Musk and artificial intelligence and this notion of transhumanism, a new philosophical theory that's come upon about in the last 20 years. And it's this idea that we can take ourselves and our technology and improve, actually facilitate evolution to make ourselves better, live longer, understand more, feel deeper. I'm not quite sure exactly what it is, but I look at it in a little bit of a limited way, is that it's to expand our knowledge of what we perceive with our five senses, and to think that that's it. To me, this kind of is a little bit like you got to start with that premise. Well, that's it. But here's just a last quote that I'm going to read on this, and I just think it's terrifying. Transhumanism promotes the quest to develop further so that we can explore hitherto inaccessible realms of value. I feel pretty good about myself. I don't know if I need a computer to enhance me. Technological enhancement of human organisms is a means that we ought to pursue to this end. There are limits to how much can be achieved by low-tech means, such as education, philosophical contemplation, moral self-scrutiny, and other such methods proposed by classical philosophers with perfectionist leanings, including Plato, Aristotle, and Nietzsche, and by means of creating a fairer and better society as envisioned by social reformists such as Marx or Martin Luther King. This is not to denigrate what we can do with the tools we have, yet ultimately transhumanists hope to go further. And I just see a inherent, like a paradox in here, so that we're going to find that enlightenment and transform ourselves through ourselves and our scientific and technological capabilities. And to me, that just sounds crazy. Let's get back to Skye Lazaro, who doesn't appear too crazy. Although she is a lawyer, she's got to be half crazy. Skye, there's never enough time. I got your mic off. There's never enough time, so I want to kind of cut to the chase a little bit. Let's go back to this, the prom that you put on.
This project is probably the nearest and dearest to my heart of anything I do or have done. I absolutely love what they're doing at the Homeless Youth Resource Center. This prom gives people, or these teenagers, just a few hours of normalcy. We bring in dresses, we bring in suits, we bring in hair and makeup, we bring in a DJ.
Nobody's spiking the punch bowl, are they?
Well, they're not supposed to.
I hope they're not spiking the punch bowl.
We do our best.
How many times has this happened?
I think we're on this will be year 3 coming up. So,
and who sponsors it? Drop a few names here.
The Young Lawyers Division of the Bar, Utah State Bar.
White, is Gabe White still a young lawyer?
He can't be anymore.
I think
right?
so. He's 35 or so, but he still seems like a young lawyer to me.
He is. Good guy. There's a number of volunteers. We get some community donations. I sort of did a cash drive last year just to get some money for decorations, flowers, boutonnieres, corsages, those sorts of things. But the DJ comes in and donates their time. The food was all catered, served sit-down dinner style. The desserts were all donated. It's really amazing, and this community is so good. It's one of the reasons I love living here. Is people have been amazing to me. People have jumped on board with everything I've ever asked them to do. it's been phenomenal.
Give me some stories inside. It's one thing to say, you know, the homeless ball, and to envision, you know, some. It's even hard for me to really picture like some of the people that you're dealing with. And I know you told us earlier, you know, some of them may not be homeless, not completely homeless. But do they have abusive homes, or maybe trying to avoid home, or?
Yeah, I mean, these kids have, I mean, everything from substance abuse issues to just being homeless to some mental health problems. I mean, these are the kids you just see with a backpack and scrubby clothes walking down the street. A lot of them sleep at the shelter, eat at the shelter. Maybe some of them just have such bad home lives, or they're low income that they won't get a hot meal.
So just a real mix.
Yeah, and it's, you know, I've taken my son and some of his friends down a couple times, and they help out, and some of the hockey guys get involved and help out. So it's, you know, it's sad, but you know what's amazing? You get to know these kids, and they are, I mean, it's like you don't know what you don't know, right?
The real.
Yeah, they're just, you know, they're great kids. They engage with us. They love seeing us. It's, you know, their names. You know, you kind of.
What ages are they?
I don't know how old they have to be there, but it's under 18, and they're all teenagers. So I think it's. I want to say it's like 16, 17, 18.
Are there as many girls as there are boys?
I would say, yeah. I would say it's probably a pretty fair split.
Okay. When's the next dance?
So we do the prom in October every year. I don't think we have set the date. We're going to have a meeting here soon. So
when's the next breakfast?
Our next breakfast that I am doing is in March. But you can go on the VOA's website. It's voaut.org. And you can actually sign up. So if you have a group of people, and they always need people to come in and do a breakfast or a dinner. So if you have a group, I think 6 to 7 is ideal. Too many more, and it's too crowded in there.
I was going to go the other day, but I saw you were there, so I knew I was covered. All right, Skye's got it. I'm going to go play my guitar.
But if you go on their website, you can actually sign up your group to do the breakfast, and then you can either make it at home or you can do dinner. You can cook there. They have a full kitchen. We've done it both ways.
Skye, how is it? You know, there's something about it where it's the kids that feels different to me than, you know, there's a lot of homeless grown-ups.
Right.
But something about the kids, right?
I think when you, or at least for me, I mean, I would take them all home if I could. But there's still hope, right? Not that there's not hope with adults, but when you have kids in that situation and you just think, gosh, if I could just help them a little bit, they can make the rest of their life better. Or, you know, give them just some support or someone to look up to or someone to talk to that isn't.
Doesn't take much, right?
It's not a lot. I mean, I think, I don't know, at least for me, I mean, I grew up in a really, really small community and people helped each other. There wasn't a lot of money. It's all ranches and
the old days. Now you're showing your age. Not how rural it was. That's how old you are.
I know. But I mean, it's really a community thing. And if something happens or someone's down, everybody helps. It's just the way it is. And I think I've always been that way. And
well, and a lot of people will help when there's a real big crisis.
Right.
You know, and it's on television and stuff. It's a little bit more meaningful when it's just sort of every day.
Yeah, and
right?
You know, I think if more people probably helped every day, we might have less crisis situations.
Instead of watching cable network news and pretending they're fighting over things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I cut you off earlier because I know that you wanted to credit some folks that you've worked with, and I think that this Skye Club, am I right?
Yes.
First, what is Skye Club? Or is that what we're talking about?
Yeah,
here?
Skye Club is really an informal group. When we started doing the homeless youth, or we started doing the prom, and then we started doing these breakfasts and dinners, I'd post pictures on Facebook or my social media.
Is there a Facebook page for Skye Club?
There is a Facebook page. It's SKYE and then Club. Or you can find me on Facebook, and I can add you to it.
And by the way, I would like all of Skye's friends to find me and friend me. Because as soon as I posted that you were coming on the show, it was just going off the hook. And I looked and I'm like, none of those friends are mine. Maybe Henny, maybe Chris Hendricks or Marjorie Stewart.
She's her own entity.
Yeah.
It's kind of become that. But so many people wanted to help and kept Facebooking me. And I just for, to try to consolidate it all. And, that way I can just put everything on one page, and we can do more breakfasts and more dinners, and I don't have to be all of them. I can put together little groups to do
Okay,
it.
but I cut you off. Going back in time, you
Yeah.
had mentioned someone's name.
Kate Conyers.
Kate would be mad if I cut her off and didn't bring her back up.
I know.
Who was she, and how did she,
Kate.
what was her involvement?
Kate's a saint. Kate's another attorney here in Salt Lake City. I've known her since I started practicing here. So probably the last 8 years or so, and she's really the one who got me involved in the homeless youth center. And
Where
the
does she
prom.
work now?
She has her own law firm now. It's
Where is
called
that?
Conyers Nix.
Is she right there in my building on the
she
9th
is.
floor?
She's on the 8th floor. She has my old space.
Oh, I'm going to go down and say hi to
You
her
should.
tomorrow. And so that's 401 Main Street?
405.
405. I
You
don't
know
even
your
my own
address.
I know your
address.
address.
Well done.
And what type of work does she do?
She does criminal defense work as well.
Competitor of yours?
You
We'll give her a pitch anyway, right?
Yeah, I don't know that we compete in this profession. There's
I'm
enough
teasing.
work.
Yeah, no, I'm teasing. And there's a lot of good ones out there,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm sorry, I'm interfering with my stupid humor. Tell me a little more about her role and what she did.
So she started the Cinderella Dress Project, I don't even know how long ago, and that's when she was taking prom dresses around to local high schools. Girls could check them out and use them. And then when she, I think, passed that kind of baton on to the next generation, she approached me and said, hey, why don't we do this prom? And so
What
that's
year was
how-
that?
2017, 16, 2016. It took us a year to plan it.
Yeah, really.
It's a lot of work. So
I remember my prom.
Do you? I'm sure you do.
Well,
We
the
won't
first
go there.
half of it.
We can't talk about that on the radio.
Right, it was. I wasn't in Utah, and it wasn't the 21st century. Skye, you were highlighted in Attorney at Law magazine, and it's got you as just the up and coming. And I can tell you, I knew before I met you that you were an alpha dog with tact and compassion, and someone that could probably sell something to somebody in a courtroom.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I can kind of spot them. And after spending these 2 hours with you, I think I was right. Where do you go from here? Besides to your fancy car out there. What was it? I thought I saw it was a old.
Keep saving the world.
I think it was an old Jetta. I think I saw her get out of.
Yeah.
94 Jetta.
I'm going to take my 94 Jetta and continue fighting for the rights of the people.
I hope to cross your path and not be on the other side of you
As does everyone.
any more than this table right now. Pleasure meeting you.
Likewise.
Skye.
Thank
Good
you
luck.
guys.
Thank you for listening, folks. Talk with Ted. I will be back next week, and I'm going to have another different guest.